Hi! Welcome back to High on History.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Liz.
And so, last week, we left off with me talking about the amazing Susan B. Anthony.
Total Spitfire.
Dude, she was awesome. And then I believe somewhere along the line we were ending the timeline with the Silent Sentinels?
Yeah,
Did I say that right?
The Silent Sentinels, yeah.
Yeah. And they were starting around the 1900s. Susan B. Anthony died in 1906. So now we're going to kind of pick up with Liz's side of the suffrage movement and the labor movement as well that spawned off in the early 1900s. And I'm looking forward to finding out what bread and roses means.
Yeah. So, hi. We're gonna cover today the amazing Rose Schneiderman, and really, I guess, the origin of the phrase bread and roses and like what it means.
Yeah.
So, first, a bit of a biography. So Rose Schneiderman was born in 1882 in Samyn, Poland. I apologize if I mispronounced that. That might be Samyn. I don't know. I don't speak Polish.
Yeah.
Her family immigrated to New York City when she was 8. And then 2 years later, her dad died and left her mom with 4 kids, just totally destitute.
Oh wow, at 8 years old, so I assume she's no longer in school anymore at that point, at that age, and at that, what I mean by at that age.
Well, she moved there when she was 8, so then she was 10, and from what I read, so first, she got a slightly better education even in Poland than, we might have expected, and then she continued to get a pretty good education. She didn't drop out of school until the 6th grade.
Oh wow, that's actually impressive.
Yeah, and then at that point she worked as a cashier, so a storefront cashier for a little while.
Okay.
And then she went to work in the factories making the linings for caps and hats, making the...
Oh,
yeah.
The leather interior, or maybe not leather, but the cloth.
The lining, yeah, the lining,
okay.
From what I understand, yeah.
Cool. Sorry about that sparked some controversy because around the time of the war and everything.
Well, okay, so first she was a lining stitcher, but actually then her and her family moved to Montreal in 1902.
Montreal, Canada, I presume? Okay.
Yeah. And in Montreal, now I didn't get a lot of the great narrative details. This is kind of, one of the bummers of doing fast research like this.
Mm-hmm.
But she got really into socialist ideals and trade unionism.
Okay, yeah.
And then she moves back to New York and winds up working another factory job.
So when she's hitting New York, what time is this?
I think she was only in Montreal for about 2 years, so I'm about 1904.
1904. Okay. So wow. Okay, this would have been right around the time the suffragettes were marching and doing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it actually says right here 1903.
1903.
Yeah.
Cool. That would have been right around same time as the oh my God, why does that word suck for me?
The Silent Sentinels.
Yeah.
Right. So, in 1903, she comes back to New York. She starts working in another factory, and she starts organizing the women in this hat factory.
Cool.
And then her and just a few women applied for a union charter.
Oh.
Yeah, with the United Cloth Hat and Cap Makers Union. That's a mouthful, but that's what it was called.
So a full set, okay, so I'm not entirely sure how unions work. I did not do any research. I should have probably did a little research on how some of these things worked in all the conversation. But so when you say her,
she applied for
and her group of women, it was a specific women only group chapter, Or would this union chapter be open to all genders for when
So this was a woman's charter.
Okay.
And like their first attempt, it didn't even go. Basically, the union said, okay, you got to go back and organize at least 25 women, then come back to us.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then they did that, and then they got their charter, and they were the first all-women's charter in that union.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So right away, like, and this is actually pretty early on in her activism. Like, right away, she's getting women organized, and she starts working. Kind of particularly with immigrant women and Jewish women, which, you know, that makes, she was a Polish Jewish immigrant herself.
Oh, she was Jewish?
She was also Jewish,
okay.
yeah. So then this charter was a pretty big deal. New York was not really a progressive place in 1903. Like,
no, it really wasn't. I mean, it was until 1917 when they passed women's suffrage rights. So, I mean, like, and
then of course, you know, you can organize a union, you can say you're in a union or whatever. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you're not getting pushback from the bosses.
Of course.
So, like, the factory owners are resisting her, like, every step of the way.
Of course.
You know, and she's out there fighting, basically, at the time, like, her initial fight is just better working conditions.
Yeah.
In general. And that's going to come up over and over again. The suffragettes, one of the reasons to demand the right to vote was to demand the right to safe working conditions.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of one of the demands on the Declaration of Sentiments was the right to have the opportunity to have a career. I don't remember verbatim what I said. I threw away my notes. But
yeah, safe working conditions was a big part of the ask back then.
So she was early OSHA.
She would have loved to have seen the creation of OSHA, I'm sure. Yeah. So then, in 1910, there's this big, they called it an automobile campaign.
Okay.
And I gotta tell you, this is where I should have done some research. I'm not sure what an automobile campaign is.
Is this in 1911 with Helen Todd?
Well, 1910.
Yeah, 1910.
Yeah.
So the automobile campaign was back when the automobile factories were like early production of, I don't remember what model, the 1910, I think it was like the T whatever, the early Fords and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That was back when they were first being produced. There was a lot of really bad, horrible working conditions, a lot of deaths, and so, I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not fact-checking myself right now. I'm tired. It's been a long day.
Well, okay. So what it actually says here is, Helen Todd was a suffragette and activist who gave a speech in 1910 during an automobile campaign in Illinois. Now, in that speech, she specifically uses the phrase that's bread and roses, but she also is not actual, like, okay, so if you look up the history, and you just try to look this up, bread and roses, it's going to talk about Rose Schneiderman first.
Okay.
But Rose Schneiderman appears to have picked up the phrase from this speech by Helen Todd.
Oh.
And Helen Todd appears to have gotten the idea for the phrase from something that was said to her by so she was boarding during this campaign. She, like, I guess, renting a room from a family. And there was a young girl also in the house. I don't know if it was a daughter or another house guest, but this this young girl comes up to Helen and says, basically tells her that what she's most enjoyed about all these speeches is, but you know what, I will find the quote here. I actually,
yeah.
That it was about women voting, so everybody would have bread and flowers too.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, and so Helen Todd takes that and she wraps it into a speech, And here's Helen Todd's version of that. So what Helen Todd says is, not at once, but woman is the mothering element in the world, and her vote will go forward, helping forward the time when life's bread, which is home, shelter, and security, and the roses of life, music, education, nature, and books, shall be the heritage of every child that is born.
Ooh.
So, like, she's telling you now what bread and roses is. So bread is those fundamentals we need.
Yeah.
Food, clothing, shelter, warmth, the basics,
the
right?
basics of life.
And then roses are those things which make life worth living. Poetry, art, education, music.
Right.
You know, those things
and
which actually fill our
to
spirits.
them.
And having access to them, right. Right. And access was the issue, right?
Yeah, and back
wealthy
then,
women had that.
The woman suffrage movement,
right.
too, was making sure that we all had the access to the right to vote, the right to property, the right to have the...
a purse.
A purse. The right to a purse, the right to a job, the right to opportunity to prosper on our own.
So then, in 1911... absolute tragedy strikes. The movement is going okay, but then there is a factory fire. It's called the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire.
I remember you telling me about this a little bit.
So basically, it was devastating. Like 146 people killed.
Really? Wow.
And 123 of them were women and girls.
Let me guess, they had the doors locked so the women weren't allowed to take breaks?
I guess they thought of it as loss prevention. They didn't want them taking unauthorized breaks, but it was super common practice at the time. So I want to say it was the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of this factory. 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the Ash Building, which is in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. It's actually still there near the campus. It's just called, I think, the Brown Building now. People couldn't escape. In fact, there was apparently at the time a fairly iconic scene where this young couple, man and a woman, stood at a window, kissed each other, and jumped to their, deaths. Wow. So a lot of people died because of that fire, and it inflamed public opinion. It really got that conversation about labor and safety going again. Most of the women in that factory were immigrants, and they were mostly women. The oldest was 46, but on average, they were between 14 and 23.
Oh,
was the average age of the people who died in there,
Wow.
And like I said, of 146 people, 123 of them were women and girls.
Wow.
So, so then Rose kind of gets a little bit famous again because by this point she's been president I've forgotten, but she's been vice president and I think president of one of the women's labor unions there in New York, and she winds up giving a speech at the Metropolitan Opera House. Now the audience, and this is kind of fascinating because the audience wasn't the city council or the workers. She was talking to other suffragette activists. And she basically kind of went a little off the rails. She seems to have... she excoriated them. I mean, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And basically, I don't seem to have the note written down for that part of the speech. But basically, she was like, hey, look, you guys need to do your jobs. People are dying.
Yeah.
Your activism doesn't mean anything if people are still dying.
Right.
It's kind of the point. So, And then in 1912,
Yeah.
so this is like 2 years after Helen Todd has given her speech.
Okay.
And 1 year after the fire.
Okay,
right?
okay, yeah.
So in 1912, Rose gave a speech in Cleveland, and what she said there was, quote, "What the woman who labors wants is the right to live, not simply exist, the right to life, as the rich woman has the right to life, and the sun, and music, and art. You have nothing that the humblest worker has not a right to have also. The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too. Help, you women of privilege, give her the ballot to fight with."
Ooh.
Um,
And that definitely goes into the women's suffrage movement still, because we don't get the right to vote until 1920.
right. And so she's at, you said 1906 is when
Susan B.
Susan
Anthony
B. Anthony
passed
died.
away.
This is 1912, so just 6 years
6 years
later,
later.
these ladies are all in the mix together here,
Yeah.
right? And then, and I didn't, so it's lengthy. I really thought about just, at some point reciting the poem Bread and Roses, but
Right.
that speech went on to be the inspiration for a poem called Bread and Roses.
Oh.
I highly suggest you guys look it up. It's a great poem. And then Rose goes on to work in the Roosevelt administration. Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. He
The presidency.
yeah.
Sure.
So, she continued to be a pioneering labor leader and advocate for women's rights. She served on the National Recovery Administration's Labor Advisory Board under President Franklin D. Roosevelt.
That's really cool.
So I looked, I couldn't backtrack this information, but, because I looked on the ACLU website and I didn't see her listed there. But
Wasn't she supposed to be a founder?
So when I was looking at her biography, it says she is a founding member of the ACLU.
Well, she is actually one of the founding members.
That's what it said when I looked at her autobiography. Now, I did actually go to fact check that, so I looked to see the listed founding members of the ACLU, and her name didn't appear on that list.
Okay.
Is that women being erased from history? Did my research lead me astray somewhere? I don't know. Maybe I just missed something. I really don't know.
I mean,
So there might be a little discrepancy there, but according to her biography, she was a founding member of the ACLU, and I thought, I knew I liked this woman, but, I didn't find that out until the very end of my research, and I was just like, as if I didn't already admire her enough,
at
right?
least you found something positive on the same day as your research. Sure, I found
Right,
tragedy
right.
on
You
my
found
side.
you found the Night of Glass, right?
Night of Terror.
The Night of Terror.
No, the Night of Glass was
I thought
a different
it
movement.
was Night of Broken Glass.
The Night of Broken Glass.
Oh no,
was
that's a whole
Jewish-
that's a whole different thing.
That was Nazi Germany.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have no idea what
mine was the Night of Terror.
the Night of Terror.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
So Schneiderman passed away in New York City, so she lived there most of her life.
Okay.
On August 11th, 1972, at the age of 90.
Ooh.
1972. So,
Wow.
she was around when Susan B. Anthony cast her ballot, and she only passed away just a few more years before I was born. Just barely.
Susan B. Anthony casted her ballot in 1972. So she...
Wait, not 1972. She died in
1872 is when Susan B. Anthony cast her ballot. So she was born just a few years after.
After that, right?
Yes.
Right, but I'm saying
But I mean, all of that.
Yeah, all that's happening very,
Right.
very closely. Let's
That would
see.
be a hell of a time to grow up in.
Yeah, she passed away August 11th, 1972, at the age of 90. Her
Yeah.
New York Times obituary credited her with teaching Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, quote, most of what they knew about unions, end quote.
Wow.
And then she's also credited indirectly influencing the Wagner Act,
Okay.
and the Industrial Recovery Act. Now, the Industrial Recovery Act was actually struck down by the Supreme Court later.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but as I understand it, basically they deemed the action, whatever that act was doing, to be essentially not constitutional, and they put a stop to that one.
Okay.
But she indirectly influenced the creation of that act, which initially did get passed.
Well, that's cool.
And then the New York Times obituary also stated that Schneiderman had done, quote, more to upgrade the dignity and living standards of working women than any other American.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to tell that story, this another neat, feisty lady who just got right in there, and she demanded dignity. She demanded dignity for herself, for everybody around her, and and inspired a poem while doing it. She was so cool. She inspired a poem.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So, I think that's it for me. Now, you had something cool you wanted to talk about next week, right?
Oh, yeah. So, a few nights ago, I had this crazy dream that I was around for Volcano Day in Pompeii.
Volcano Day.
No idea why. But, volcano go boom. So anyways, I wake up from the dream, and I've been struggling. I have no idea. I was thinking about continuing on with the civil rights movement, which is where I kind of left off with my last segment.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about carrying it on. I decided I probably wouldn't be sensitive enough for that topic.
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel like I wouldn't have the same connection to some of the civil rights movement.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. For different circumstantial reasons and whatnot. So I decided with my dream about Volcano Day that I'm going to track down the real life, geography, archaeology, and we're going to go back in time and talk about Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I'm going to learn how to pronounce some of these creatures, but I want to talk about Charybdis, I think is how it's pronounced. It's the whirlpool monster.
Ooh, cool.
And then obviously we know that the real life location of Troy has been found. I even gonna have a theory on like the Siren Islands, and possibly even might touch in on a little bit of Atlantis, bringing that in with this.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tune in next week and let's get a deep dive back into the Odyssey.
Wow. That sounds like so much fun. I am super looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I also, next time, so we changed our format, I guess you guys probably noticed. We kept trying to, split the subjects and both talk at once, and I'm sure you guys noticed a couple of episodes ago, we were just, talking over each other the whole episode. We were also trying to cover two things at the same time. We've decided to not do that.
Yeah.
Each of us is gonna essentially have 2 weeks to prepare an episode now, and then Jordan will basically cover 1 week, and I'll do the interviewing, asking questions, interacting, and then the next week I'll do one. So that gives us both 2 weeks. I'm also gonna go back to ancient history. Anybody who's been talking to me over the last year has heard the words "go backly tappy, go backly tappy."
So many hours of
a lot.
together.
So it might be that. It might be that. I saw this one shorts video about some caves in India whose outside walls have been polished like glass.
Dude, there's some really cool
There's
stuff
some amazing
in
stuff.
India.
Or inside walls, I guess. Anyway, yeah, just amazing stuff in India. I'm super fascinated with those objects out of time, objects that seem like they're just
That's kind of why I'm
too
tracking down
advanced
Odyssey.
right? So this has all happened before, it will all happen again, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So looking forward to getting together with you guys for some ancient history.
Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know how you like this new lineup. And have a great one, guys.
Live long and prosper.